The silent patient. The fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital's West Wing buzzed overhead as Olivia Bennett adjusted her watch. 3 in the morning, the quietest hour of her night shift when the world outside slept and the hospital seemed suspended in time. At 26, she'd been working nights for 3 years, finding unexpected peace in these hushed hours while completing her advanced nursing degree. "Olivia, we've got a new transfer from ICU," Nurse Felicity said, handing over a chart. "Room 412. 3rd floor Burns transferred him because he's stable enough, but be careful with this one. Apparently he's been—" She lowered her voice. "Difficult." Olivia skimmed the chart. James Hawthorne, 32, multiple fractures and internal injuries from a car accident 6 weeks ago. Previous surgeries for a collapsed lung and broken femur. Notes from other nurses included phrases like minimal communication and refuses physical therapy. "I'll handle it," Olivia said, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. She'd worked with challenging patients before. Room 412 was dimly lit when she entered. The man in the bed faced the window, his profile sharp against the glow of city lights. Even in shadow, she could see he was handsome. Strong jawline, dark hair cropped short, broad shoulders beneath the hospital gown. "Mr. Hawthorne?" "I'm Olivia, your night nurse." She approached the bed, checking his IV. "I'll be caring for you from midnight until morning. How's your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? He didn't turn. 4. Would you like something for it? No, Olivia nodded, making a note on his chart. I need to check your vitals and change your dressing. When he finally turned to face her, his eyes, a striking deep blue, held a coldness that almost made her step back. Shadows carved hollows beneath his cheekbones, and several days' worth of stubble darkened his jaw. Let's get this over with, he muttered. As she worked, Olivia noticed things the chart didn't mention. The way he winced when she helped him sit up. How his hands, architect's hands according to his file, clenched at his sides. The nightstand was bare of personal items, no cards or flowers. His phone remained untouched, though it occasionally lit up with notifications he ignored. Your recovery is progressing well, she said, trying to fill the silence, so they keep telling me. Have you considered starting physical therapy? It would help with... I know what it would help with, he cut her off. I've built hospitals. I know how they work, Olivia paused. You're an architect? Something flickered in his expression. Surprised that she'd picked up on this detail, perhaps. He corrected. I was an architect. Architecture is a skill, not just a job, she said, finishing with his bandages. That doesn't disappear with injury. He studied her face as if trying to detect insincerity. Finding none, he turned back to the window. The accident took more than you think, he said quietly. For the rest of her shift, James barely spoke. Olivia checked on him periodically, bringing water, adjusting his pillows, administering medication. Unlike other patients who welcomed conversation during the lonely night hours, he seemed to prefer his isolation. Just before dawn, when she entered his room one last time, she found him awake, staring at the ceiling. Sunrise soon? She said, opening the blinds slightly. Best part of the night shift. To her surprise, he shifted to look at the brightening horizon. My firm designed a building in Shanghai where the sunrise hits every floor at the same angle, he said, his voice softer than before. Took months to perfect. It was the longest sentence he'd spoken all night. Olivia smiled, sensing a tiny crack in his armor. I'd like to see that someday, she said. His eyes met hers briefly. It was beautiful. As she left the room, Olivia felt a curious pull toward this broken man. There was something beneath his harsh exterior, something worth reaching. Whether as his nurse or simply as another human being, she found herself wanting to understand the story behind James Hawthorne's silence. What she didn't know then was how deeply their lives would soon intertwine, or how the quiet nights ahead would change them both forever. Midnight conversations. 2 weeks into caring for James Hawthorne, Olivia had established a rhythm. Each night at 1 a.m. she'd bring him tea, chamomile with honey, even though he never asked for it. He'd initially refused, but by the 5th night, he silently accepted the cup, his fingers briefly brushing against hers. Tonight she found him sitting up, sketching on a notepad Dr. Patterson had brought him yesterday. The simple act seemed momentous, the first sign he was reconnecting with his former life. New building? Olivia asked, setting down his tea. James glanced up, the shadows under his eyes less pronounced than before. Just ideas. Nothing that will ever be built. Why not? He set down his pencil with a sigh. The board voted me out 3 days before the accident. Apparently, I was compromising the firm's reputation with my unconventional designs. Olivia pulled up a chair, sensing this rare moment of openness. What made them unconventional? I believe architecture should serve people, not just look impressive in portfolios, he said, his voice gaining animation. My last project integrated community gardens and affordable housing alongside luxury apartments. The board wanted another glass monstrosity for the wealthy, so you stood your ground. A bitter smile crossed his face, and lost everything for it. They were my partners, Tessa and Richard. Friends for 15 years, he shook his head. After the vote, I drove too fast in the rain. The rest is in your charts. Olivia's heart ached at the betrayal in his voice. Those buildings you designed, they're still standing, right? Still helping people? James looked at her strangely, as if this perspective hadn't occurred to him. Yes, they are. Then you haven't lost everything. The silence between them felt different now, thoughtful rather than strained. Over the following nights, their conversations grew longer. James spoke of his childhood in a small coastal town, where he'd sketch buildings in the sand. Olivia shared stories of the diverse patients who had shaped her nursing career. Their midnight talks became an anchor for them both. One night, as thunder cracked outside, Olivia arrived to find James attempting to stand unassisted. "What are you doing?" she asked, rushing forward as he wobbled. "Testing my limits," he grimaced, his hospital gown damp with sweat. "I can't stay in this bed forever. Not without proper physical therapy, you can't." She steadied him with an arm around his waist, trying to ignore how solid he felt despite weeks of hospitalization. "You're going to undo all your progress." Progress toward what? His frustration was palpable. "A life where I sit at home designing buildings no one will ever see? Is that what you're afraid of?" Olivia helped him back to bed, maintaining professional distance despite the increasing difficulty in doing so. "That your talent won't matter anymore?" James looked away. "I'm afraid of starting over at 32. Of having nothing to show for it all." Olivia checked his pulse, slightly elevated. "When I was 24, I had to restart nursing school after dropping out to care for my mother," she said quietly. "I thought I'd missed my chance. Now I'm almost done with my advanced degree." "It's not the same," he argued. "No, it's not," she agreed. "But starting over isn't the same as having nothing." She adjusted his pillows with practiced efficiency. "The physical therapist is coming tomorrow. Promise me you'll try?" Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a current of understanding that had been building for weeks. "Fine," he relented. "But only if you tell me why nursing. You're clearly smart enough for medical school." Olivia smiled, recognizing his deflection but allowing it. "Doctors diagnose diseases. Nurses care for people. I wanted the connection, not just the cure." The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows. James's room felt like a shelter separate from the world outside. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Choosing this life of night shifts and difficult patients?" Olivia considered the question as she checked his medication. "Some nights when I'm exhausted or a patient is particularly challenging." She gave him a pointed look that made him almost smile. "But then there are moments when I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Like now." The question was so soft she almost missed it. Something fluttered in her chest, a warning she chose to ignore. "Like now," she admitted. On her break, Olivia sat in the staff room, troubled by her growing attachment. Professional boundaries existed for a reason. Yet each night she found herself looking forward to room 412, to the quiet conversations that felt increasingly intimate. Nurse Felicity noticed her distraction. "Everything okay with Mr. Hawthorne?" "He's actually letting the physical therapist work with him now, quite the miracle." "He's improving," Olivia said carefully. Felicity raised an eyebrow. "And what about you?" "Teresa mentioned you spend an awful lot of time in his room." "He needs more attention than other patients," Olivia defended too quickly. "Just be careful, Liv," Felicity warned gently. "I've seen this before. Patients confuse care with connection. Nurses confuse compassion with something deeper." Olivia knew her colleague was right, but later that night, when she found James awake again, his blue eyes following her as she moved around his room, his voice softening when he spoke her name. She wondered if it was already too late for caution. What had begun as professional duty was shifting into dangerous territory. As James gradually healed physically, something else was growing between them, something neither had anticipated, and neither seemed able to stop. Boundaries crossed. Olivia's hand trembled slightly as she signed the transfer request form. After 3 sleepless days of deliberation, she'd made her decision. The professional line between nurse and patient was blurring dangerously with James, and she needed to step back before crossing a point of no return. "You sure about this?" Nurse Director Rosalind asked, eyeing Olivia over her reading glasses. "You've made remarkable progress with Mr. Hawthorne. He's actually participating in his recovery now." "That's precisely why it's a good time to transition," Olivia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Nurse Dominic has excellent patient rapport. James will be in good hands. 2 more shifts until the transfer takes effect," Rosalind reminded her, filing the paperwork. "I hope you know what you're doing." Olivia wondered the same thing as she made her rounds that night, deliberately saving room 412 for last. When she finally entered, James was sitting in the chair by the window, a significant improvement from the man who had refused to leave his bed weeks ago. "You're late," he said without turning, somehow knowing it was her. "Busy night," she replied, setting down his medication. "How was physical therapy today?" "Dr. Weber says I might be discharged next week." He finally looked at her, his blue eyes searching her face. "You don't seem surprised. Your recovery has been steadier than expected." She checked his chart, maintaining clinical detachment despite the weight of his gaze. "Something's different," he observed. "You're different tonight." Olivia took a deep breath. "Better to be direct. I've requested a transfer from your case. Nurse Dominic will take over my shift starting Thursday." The silence that followed was deafening. James's expression hardened. The walls she'd spent weeks dismantling instantly rebuilding. "I see," he finally said, his voice coolly formal. "May I ask why?" "It's better for your recovery to have consistency through discharge," she offered, the rehearsed excuse sounding hollow even to her ears. "That's not a real answer, Olivia." The way he said her name, like something precious, made her resolve waver. "It's complicated. Simplify it for me," he challenged, standing with minimal effort, a testament to his progress. Before she could respond, the lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the room into darkness. The backup generators hummed to life seconds later, but only the emergency hall lights activated. "Power outage," Olivia explained, her nurse instincts taking over. "The storm must have hit the main lines. The generators will prioritize critical care floors first." She moved to the door, but James caught her wrist, his touch sending an electric current up her arm despite the darkness surrounding them. "Don't leave," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not yet. Not like this." The backup lights cast his face in soft shadows, removing the harsh edges of daylight, revealing the vulnerability beneath his carefully constructed armor. "I should check on other patients," she whispered, but made no move to pull away. "They have other nurses," he countered. "I need to understand why you're walking away." Something in his intensity broke her professional resolve. "Because this, whatever is happening between us, it isn't appropriate. You're my patient. Is that the only reason?" Olivia closed her eyes briefly. "No, it's also because I can't be objective anymore. When I look at you, I don't see a patient chart or a recovery timeline. I see a man I've grown to care about in ways that go far beyond my job description." The admission hung between them. Impossible to retract. James stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" "The first person since the accident who didn't treat me like I was broken. The woman who brought me tea I never asked for and challenged me when no one else would." His hand moved from her wrist to gently cup her face. "The person who made me want to get out of that bed and try again." Olivia's heart raced as professional boundaries crumbled around them. "James, we can't—" "I know," he interrupted. "Not while I'm here. Not while you're my nurse. But next week I won't be your patient anymore." The implications of his words settled between them like a promise. "I've spent my life designing spaces for other people's lives while neglecting my own," he continued. "Then the accident happened and I lost everything I thought mattered. But in this hospital room with you, I found something I never knew I was missing." Olivia's training told her to step back, to reinstate professional distance. Instead, she found herself leaning forward. "I've never felt this way about a patient," she confessed. "It terrifies me." Good things often do. When his lips finally met hers, it felt inevitable, like the conclusion of a story they'd been writing together since that first night. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with weeks of unspoken longing. His hands cradled her face as if she were something precious, something he feared might disappear. The sudden brightness as the lights flickered back on startled them apart. Reality crashed back with harsh fluorescent clarity. Olivia stepped back, her professional training reasserting itself. "This was a mistake, was it?" James challenged, his eyes never leaving hers. "Or was it the first honest moment we've allowed ourselves?" Before she could answer, her pager beeped urgently. "I have to go," she said, her voice unsteady. "The outage, there are protocols." "Olivia." Her name on his lips stopped her at the door. "When I leave here next week, I'm going to ask you to have coffee with me. Not as your patient, but as a man who wants to know you beyond these hospital walls." She should have told him no, should have reinforced the boundaries she'd just shattered. Instead, she found herself saying, "I finish my shift at 8 a.m. on Thursdays." The hope that bloomed on his face was worth whatever professional repercussions might follow. As she hurried down the hallway to respond to her page, Olivia knew everything had changed. The transfer request in Director Rosalind's office now seemed like a futile gesture. Whatever was happening between her and James had already crossed every professional boundary she'd ever established. The only question remaining was where it would lead them both. Healing together, the coffee shop across from Memorial Hospital buzzed with morning activity as Olivia sat nervously checking her watch. 1 week had passed since James's discharge, a week of catching herself looking toward room 412 during her shifts, expecting to find him there. The bell above the door chimed, and there he stood. Without the hospital context, James Hawthorne was transformed, dressed in dark jeans and a gray sweater that emphasized the blue of his eyes, moving with only the slightest hint of his recent injuries. Several women turned to look as he passed, but his gaze remained fixed on Olivia. "You came," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I said I would." She pushed a cup toward him. "Black with 1 sugar, right?" His surprise that she remembered such a detail was evident. "How was your shift?" "Uneventful. Room 412 has a new patient, elderly gentleman with pneumonia." She hesitated. "It's strange not finding you there." "Strange being on this side of the hospital walls," he admitted. "Everything looks different from here." A silence fell between them, awkward in a way their midnight conversations had never been. Without the structure of nurse and patient, they were suddenly unmoored, navigating unfamiliar waters. "This feels complicated?" he offered. "I was going to say surreal," Olivia replied. "For weeks I knew exactly who we were to each other. Now I'm not sure." James's fingers brushed against hers on the table. "We're 2 people getting coffee. Everything else we figure out as we go." Their conversation gradually eased into familiar rhythm. James spoke of his physical therapy progress and his tentative steps back into architectural design, freelance consulting while he rebuilt his reputation. Olivia shared stories from her shifts and her upcoming nursing certification exam. As they left the coffee shop, James hesitated. "Would you like to see where I live?" "It's not far." Olivia knew she was approaching another boundary. "As friends?" "As whatever we decide to be," he said honestly. His apartment was in a converted industrial building, open concept with high ceilings and walls of windows overlooking the river. Architectural drawings covered a large table in what should have been a dining area. "It's exactly how I imagined you'd live," Olivia said, drawn to the sketches. "These are beautiful. A community center for burn survivors," he explained. "After my time in the burn unit, I realized how few spaces are designed with recovery in mind." She turned to him, touched by this evolution in his work. "You're using your experience to help others." "I had a good example," he said meaningfully. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities. Then James stepped back, breaking the tension. "I should show you something else." He led her to a small balcony garden. "My physical therapist suggested working with plants, something about fine motor skills and patience." Olivia smiled at the row of carefully tended herbs. "Healing comes in many forms. Speaking of which," he hesitated, "I've been seeing someone." "A therapist," he clarified quickly, seeing her expression. processing the accident, the betrayal, all of it. That takes courage, Olivia said softly. You inspired it. His gaze held hers. You showed me that vulnerability isn't weakness. When he moved toward her this time, there was no hospital protocol to stop them. His kiss was different from their first. Unhurried, deliberate, a beginning rather than a stolen moment. Olivia allowed herself to melt into it, her hands finding their way to his shoulders, feeling the strength returning to his frame. Yet as they pulled apart, doubt clouded her expression. What is it? James asked. Olivia stepped back, creating space to think clearly. What if this isn't real? What if it's just transference or gratitude or Florence Nightingale syndrome? He finished with a raised eyebrow. It happens more often than you'd think, she said defensively. Patients develop feelings for their caregivers. It's a well-documented psychological. Olivia. He took her hands, his touch grounding her spiraling thoughts. I've had 6 therapist-approved weeks to examine my feelings. This isn't about gratitude or trauma bonding or whatever clinical term you're searching for. Then what is it about? The way you challenge me, how you see beauty in broken things, the person you are at 3 a.m. when you think no one's watching. His voice softened. The way you brought me tea I never asked for because you knew I needed something constant in my life. Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. I'm scared, James. My last relationship ended because he couldn't handle my night shifts and emotional investment in my patients. He said I had nothing left for him. Understanding dawned in James's expression. So that's the real boundary. Not professional ethics, but your own protection. She nodded, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. I'm not asking for whatever's left after you care for others, he said carefully. I'm asking to be part of the life you've built. Night shifts, difficult patients, and all of it. It won't be easy, she warned. I work holidays, weekends. I come home emotionally drained some days. And I have physical therapy 3 times a week, occasional nightmares, and an entire former company that thinks I'm difficult to work with. He countered. We're both complicated. That doesn't mean we can't be good together. Later, as they sat on his balcony watching the sunset color the river, Olivia rested her head against his shoulder. The simple intimacy felt both foreign and familiar. What happens now? She asked. James wrapped an arm around her, careful of his still healing ribs. Now we build something new. Together. One day at a time, Olivia agreed. As darkness fell, they remained entwined, 2 people finding their way forward, not as nurse and patient, but as equals with shared wounds and hopes. The healing had only just begun, but for the first time since the accident, James felt the future expanding with possibilities rather than constraints. And Olivia, who had spent years caring for others, finally allowed someone to care for her in return. Building new foundations, 6 months after James's discharge from Memorial Hospital, autumn painted the city in russet and gold. Olivia stood at the entrance of the Riverside Community Center, staring up at the building that had existed only in James's sketches when they'd first started dating. Ready? James asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee, hers with cream and cinnamon, his black with 1 sugar. It's amazing, she said, accepting the cup. From hospital bed to this in half a year. He smiled, the expression coming easier to him now. I had good motivation. The community center was James's triumph, a redesigned space for accident survivors and their families, funded by his former partners as part of a settlement that had surprised everyone. Tessa and Richard had approached him 3 months ago, legal documents and apologies in hand. The betrayal wasn't erased, but a different kind of healing had begun. Inside, the space defied conventional design. Wide hallways accommodated wheelchairs and walkers. Natural light poured through strategically placed windows. A garden courtyard centered the building, visible from every room. Mr. Hawthorne, Dr. Weber, James's former physical therapist, approached with outstretched hand. The meditation room is brilliant. Those adjustable seating options for different mobility levels, genius. That was Olivia's suggestion, James said, his hand finding the small of her back. She noticed how uncomfortable standard furniture was for patients with certain injuries. Dr. Weber smiled knowingly at them both. You 2 make quite the team. As they continued their tour, Olivia marveled at how their professional knowledge had merged into something greater than either could have created alone. Her understanding of patient needs combined with his architectural vision had produced spaces that truly served people in recovery. The grand opening's going to be packed, James said, checking his watch. The mayor confirmed, and 3 news outlets are sending reporters. Nervous? Olivia asked. Terrified, he admitted with a candor that still surprised her sometimes. But the good kind of terrified. She squeezed his hand. The best things often are. Her words from that night during the power outage, now a private reference between them, a reminder of how far they'd come. Later, as community members and officials filled the center, James stood at the podium, his presence commanding in a way that had been unimaginable during those early hospital days. 6 months ago, I was broken, physically and spiritually, he began, his voice steady. I believed my career and purpose were finished. But sometimes what looks like an ending becomes a doorway to something greater. His eyes found Olivia in the crowd. This center exists because someone taught me that healing isn't just about physical recovery. It's about rebuilding purpose, finding meaning in the broken places. The applause was thunderous when he cut the ribbon. As guests explored the building, James wove through the crowd to find Olivia deep in conversation with nurse director Rosalind. Your young man has created something extraordinary, Rosalind told her. The hospital board is discussing a partnership to use this as a transition space for our long-term recovery patients. He's full of surprises, Olivia agreed, her eyes meeting James's over Rosalind's shoulder. When they finally had a moment alone in the garden courtyard, James led Olivia to a secluded bench beneath a Japanese maple. There's something I need to show you, he said, unrolling a set of blueprints. My next project. Olivia studied the drawings, a modest house with a wraparound porch situated by water. It's beautiful. Where's the location? That coastal town I told you about, where I used to draw buildings in the sand. His fingers traced the outline of the structure. My grandfather's property is still there. It's been sitting empty for years. Understanding dawned slowly. You're leaving the city? I'm considering a change, he clarified. The kind that might require a partner who's ready for a new chapter too. Olivia's heart raced as he set aside the blueprints and took both her hands in his. These past 6 months have taught me that home isn't a building or a city, it's where you find purpose and love, he said, his voice low and intent. You were right that night in the hospital when you said I hadn't lost everything. I just couldn't see what I still had or what I was about to find. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. James, she whispered, suddenly understanding where this was leading. I'm not asking you to leave your career or the city, he continued. The hospital near the property actually needs nursing specialists. Director Rosalind helped me check. They'd hire you in a heartbeat. But if you want to stay here, I'll design us something perfect in the city. The blueprints are just possibilities. He opened the box, revealing a ring with a sapphire surrounded by smaller diamonds. What matters is that we build the next part together, wherever that may be. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as memories cascaded through her mind. The cold patient who wouldn't look at her, the midnight conversations, the tea he never asked for, the kiss during the power outage, all the moments large and small that had led them here. The night we met, you told me you'd built hospitals, she said softly. Now you've come full circle. With the right partner beside me, he added, question in his eyes. Olivia touched his face, tracing the features that had become so dear to her. In nursing school, they teach us to maintain professional distance, to care without becoming attached. Then you came along and challenged everything I thought I knew. She glanced around at the building they'd created together, a place of healing born from their unlikely connection. Yes, she said simply, whatever we build next, wherever it stands, yes. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, it felt like the completion of a journey neither had expected to take. As he pulled her close, the autumn sunlight catching in her hair, James marveled at how differently his life had unfolded from what he'd planned. The accident that should have ended everything had instead become the beginning. The nurse who was supposed to be temporary had become his constant. The broken pieces of his former life had been transformed into something stronger and more beautiful than before. Above them, the Japanese maple released a shower of crimson leaves, nature's own celebration of endings that become beginnings, of wounds that transform into wisdom, of 2 lives now intertwined in a blueprint entirely their own. In the distance, the river flowed on, constant and ever-changing, much like the journey that had brought them here and the one that still awaited, filled with possibilities neither could yet imagine but both were ready to explore. Together,